Welcome, everyone. This is the Yellow Point Ecological Society's presentation with Jain Alcock White. And before I get going, I want to share a little bit about our Yellow Point Ecological Society. Here's our website. Our purpose is to understand, appreciate, protect, and restore the ecosystems and watersheds in the Yellow Point area of Vancouver Island, and to inspire and support local residents and visitors to do the same. We honor the Stanemo and Cheminas First Nations who have stewarded these lands and the waters of the Cedar Sea for thousands of years. If you explore our website, you'll find details of our activities, our nature in Yellow Point, with a big website on the sound of the birds in the area and all the trees of Yellow Point, and lots of stuff on how to protect the forest. Our guest today is Jain Alcock White. Jain is a student of nature who has spent most of her career working for environmentally related branches of government with advanced education in recreation, fish and wildlife management technologies, and environmental management. She's a registered holistic nutritionist, and she's currently studying Vitalist Herbalism. She owns Champagne Hill Botanicals, a small batch herbalism shop in Cedar, BC, where she offers a locally wildcrafted and garden-grown herbal medicines and skincare products, seasonal workshops and events. She's come back to her love of the natural world and her belief in the importance of holistic wellness. So Jain is going to be sharing with us her thoughts and insights on cultivating a relationship with nature. Take it away, Jain.
Okay, thank you, Guy. Hi, everybody. I am going to
go to screen share.
Oh. Sorry.
That's okay.
Let's see, there it is.
There we go, full screen, we got it.
Okay, so here we go. I am here today to talk to you about cultivating a relationship with nature, but the sort of main method that I'm going to talk about is the importance of plants. And I feel lucky that you're all here voluntarily. So I know you at least have some interest in plants and nature, and some of the seem a bit out there to some people, but maybe you're like my secret tribe of plant lovers over there. So talking about plants and nature and a relationship with them can seem like a totally broad topic, but it can also be very specific and personal. So I'm going to talk about plant communication and nature immersion using myself as an example. Let's see. Champagne Hill Botanicals, as Guy mentioned, and it's in Cedar, if you haven't heard of it or been here yet. I make traditional herbal medicines and skincare products using plants that I wildcraft, which just means they're harvested from our local environment, or that they're in my garden or my mom's amazing garden. Those are my main sources for plants. And for me, it's something I treasure to have a relationship with the plants, because they go direct to my product, and it's like you have a relationship with it from the very beginning, from the harvesting to the end. And part of my process, the relationship I have into the products through, like, you know, my intentions, and it's like cooking for you know, how people's grandma would cook for you, and the food is cooked with love. It's the same type of relationship. And so I always have remedies on hand that are effective for my kids, made with chickweed and plantain and comfrey. And then there's immune supporting remedies that I can just, you know, run right out to my shop and grab from, made with rose hips and elderberries. We've got this amazing trove of therapeutic plants. I'm pointing, there's a window over there, just out. We all have access to them, but it's kind of like we need to relearn the connection that we all do have with plants. I came to have my shop by chance rather than by design. And I think if I had followed my instincts earlier in life, I probably would have still ended up where I am now. I would have just been much further on this path. I'm not a clinical herbalist yet, although I would like to be. I've education I'm with recreation, fish and wild, environmental management. There's a lot of botany and that type of work in there. And it kind of seems a bit disconnected.
Jane, your sound is cutting out sometimes. So maybe if you speak closer to the laptop.
Sure, sorry.
We can't hear you at the moment.
Continue to have. Okay, sorry. Hear me now? Either.
No, Jane, if you're talking, we're not hearing you.
I can hear now.
Yeah, we can't. Well, I can't hear you at this end. Just, I heard that. So.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I heard that.
My microphone is still. My microphone is still.
Yeah, you're fading in and out. And your photo's freezing as well. We're losing you.
I could move.
Jane,
do you move? Run away quickly. So when you, I can hear you a little bit, Anna.
I was just wondering, do you want to give Henry a call for tech support on his cell phone?
Well, it's just a sound matter. I'm not sure.
No, I think it's just like.
It's the normal thing about whether, you know, it comes up quite often on Zoom calls to do with the bandwidth.
Okay. I think I can say it's too low.
When we ran this by, when we tested this morning, the sound was just fine all the way through.
How's this?
What if we mute everybody, Guy? Does that help?
Yes, everyone is muted except for you, so that's not the problem.
Okay. I muted myself though, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Can you hear me better now?
Turn your own volume up and on your laptop maybe.
Hello.
Yeah, speak. We can hear you. It's sounds like
it's on full blast.
Okay, well just press on with it.
Okay. Sorry, now I have to adjust because I'm sitting on the floor in the living room. Okay, here we go.
That's better. That's better.
Spontaneous.
There we go. Lots of volume.
Okay, so as I was saying, the thread of consistency throughout everything is my connection with the earth, ecology, and myself. I didn't see this thread of connection for the longest time. There's, I think, a phase of life everybody goes through where we're just trying to get the right piece of paper so you can get the right job, and you know, you're always chasing this invisible something that we're all supposed to chase. And I've probably spent 15 years working for various branches of government, and they all were environmentally related, but it was never the right fit for me. And you know, you're following somebody else's ethics and values and following all these different rules and regulations. And finally, I got laid off, which was a total blessing in disguise. And it took me a long time to even see that it was a blessing in disguise. And when that happened, I thought, okay, you know, now what? It's time to turn around and look back at myself. And once you finally actually look to yourself, you find, you know, you're kind of covered in wounds. Some are closed, some are open, and you need tending. It's something that most people don't actually do, is tend to themselves. Because you can't really chase that piece of paper and that job if you're conscious and introspective and connected. At least that's my experience. So the first thing I did when I finally realized this was slow down and try to think, like, who am I actually? Who am I? I've spent my whole career being a career person, and to support the weaknesses I realized I had to go outside, do what I'm doing in this picture here, and just tune back in. The certificate I got in holistic nutrition was an important first part in that step for me. And just sort of rekindling the love I've always had for nature and plants and sharing that with other people, which is what I'm doing right now. And I started making herbal medicines and then sharing them with friends and family, and finally getting a Facebook business page, and most recently a website to sort of extend the reach, because I'm passionate about it, obviously. And so I just always trust that the plants and the earth are my guides. And it's of critical importance to my health and to my kids' health and to my family's health. So I just rambled on about myself a bunch. We are actually here to talk about plants and cultivating your personal relationship with nature. So in my experience, it's not just about the plants as being things or even living things, but I think people don't realize sometimes that plants are actually living beings, and each plant has a diverse and unique set of characteristics. Some of them you can see, their shape, their growth formation, the habitat that they prefer to grow in, their scent, their taste, and then some things that are not obvious, like their nutritive and medicinal properties and toxic compounds that they might have. And it's the plant's inherent connectedness to the earth that makes it more than just a living thing, but a living being, because like it or not, the earth is actually our source of life. It is the earth, the planet is alive, and everything that comes out of it is alive. And we are here because of that source of life. So the energetics inside of a plant can be thought of as a vibrational energy. And it's this energy that you feel if you go out and sit in your garden or sit in the forest. And if you take a lot of time and practice and quietness, you can notice that different plants give off a different vibe. And it's the same kind of feeling that we've all experienced when you walk into a room and maybe you want to stay or maybe you want to leave. That is the energy that the people are giving off. The plants do have energy too. Some people have heard about forest bathing, which is really the same type of idea. And it's becoming more of a popular thing, which is a wonderful thing. The reason it is beneficial is because of the negative ions. And some of you maybe have heard of that, but that is what the earth is mainly comprised of, like the earth as in the soil and the plants and the living creatures like that, which are basically negatively charged electrons. And because we are electrical beings, your heart and a lot of your body runs on electrical impulses. So most people know that you need to ground your appliances, your fridge, the wiring in your house, all that needs to be grounded. So, I mean, otherwise you're going to have an electrical fire in your house. But we forget about ourselves. We actually need to be grounded too. And we go through most of our lives wearing insulating shoes and driving around in vehicles that have insulating tires, or living in houses where we are elevated off the ground. So ultimately, most of the time that we go through our daily modern lives, we are completely ungrounded from the planet. And this results in a lot of health conditions that are really prevalent now. Just basic ones like stress and anxiety, fatigue and depression, and inflammation are easily, well, depends, maybe easily isn't the right word, but they can be remedied by the simple act of going outside and physically connecting with nature. From a scientific perspective, the vibrational energy in plants, like I said, can be thought of as electrical charges. So different plants need different nutrients. If you're a gardener, you probably understand that concept. And they take up the nutrients that they need through their roots from the soil. Now, different nutrients have different charges. Going back in my mind, magnesium, I believe, was positively charged. You know, you think of Mg2+, that's magnesium. I think potassium is a positive charge. Calcium was a negative charge if you ever did chemistry. So while the plants have a range of positive and negative charges, the overall charge of a forest is a negative charge. So that is why when you go into a different forest or a different garden, you feel different vibrational energies. So, you know, I have no idea, but if you go into a forest with a bunch of sword ferns, they maybe have an overall slightly more positive charge than a forest of salal, just for an example. And so you might write off the feeling that you get when you walk into the woods as just varying electrical charges, but it is deeper than that, because those plants have a direct relationship with the soil and the mycorrhizae and the microbes and all the little creatures that are in there, the moisture and the wind and the sun. And they're plugged into a complex network of life and death and regeneration. So they are far more attuned to the environment than we are, but we can learn from them and tune in. As I said, when you slow down, you can get these signals yourself. I'm going to switch a little bit and just talk about more specific details about plants. I have this botanical shop, and I have a lot of people who come in looking for cures. They either have migraine headaches and they would like a cure for their migraine, or their indigestion, or their seasonal allergies, or their psoriasis, that type of thing. And that in herbalism is often called the this for that approach, which is what we really all have grown up to know in conventional or allopathic medicine. You have a headache, you take something to kill your headache. You have sore muscles, you take a muscle relaxant or something like that. And that is understandable. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but just as I was explaining, plants have different characteristics. So do people. So one plant isn't going to treat everybody's cough the same way. Mullein, for example. I don't know. Does anyone know what mullein is? Nod, don't nod. It grows here in lots of places. Has big, soft, velvety leaves. And typically, if you have a really dry cough and someone else has a really wet cough, you can't just use the same plant to treat the same cough in two different people. Mullein is soft and soothing. And there's another plant often used for coughs, lobelia, which is more bitter and drying. So obviously, the mullein is going to be great for a dry cough like bronchitis, whereas lobelia is going to be better for a wet cough. So knowing which plant is good for what is part science and part relationship. And the same concept does apply to your garden plants. You can just follow the directions on your seed packet and hope for the best. But you can develop a deeper relationship with the plant too. So you can observe how it is growing and know maybe what kind of support your plants need. And it might sound totally out there, but really we do actually have words for this in our language, such as, like trust your gut and follow your heart. We all say these things, but they actually are real things. We all know that feeling when you know what you should do, even if there is no scientific reason behind it. Becoming a gardener or herbalist can be challenging if your strategy is just to read and learn and memorize everything. It's a lot of information to take in and just store in your brain. But if you actually have gone outside and spent time getting to know a certain plant first and watched how it grows, you can see in this picture of horsetail, we all know that horsetail likes to grow in damp kind of ditches or muddy areas or wetlands, that type of thing, and watch it over the seasons, or even taste it, smell it, get to know that plant so that when you go back and you're studying and learning that plant, you have like an existing relationship to put that information into. It's a lot easier to get to know your plants that way if you have an actual relationship with the plants. And And it's not like some kind of weird psychic ability to tune into plants. We all have this ability. We are all actually children of a wild and crazy planet covered in trees and plants. We just live in a very disconnected world. And so I'm trying to talk about my suggested ways of rekindling or restoring that disconnection. The plants, as I was saying, are always communicating with their environment. They use biochemical messages. They're constantly taking in and sending out information. And the signals are very subtle, but if you really allow yourselves to open your minds and your hearts, like I said, with the follow your heart type of sentiment, you can tune into some of these signals. It's kind of like flexing a muscle you've forgotten how to use. And I remember I went to some massage therapists, and one of the things I was supposed to do, and I can't even remember why, but I had to lift my big toe first, and then all my other toes after, and then reverse that. And I could not even figure out how to move my big toe when it started. But you actually, when you tune in, I was able to feel like, oh, I can feel a tingle there. I know if I control that tingle, suddenly I can lift my big toe up. It was just, I was totally disconnected with those muscles simply for lack of use. So this slide that I have here is basically just some little prompts for ways that you can rekindle your own connection. Go outside, connect with the earth. This is a picture of what I like to do at the river in the summer. Take off your shoes, lay down on the rocks, get into the water, and use your senses, all of your senses. And your heart is a sensing organ. It's just more of a subtle sensing organ. As I was saying also, not all plants are the same. They all have different energetics, and you will be able to communicate with them and cultivate your relationship with them in different ways. Just as habitat types differ from plant to plant, so do the plant's energetics. And you can't suddenly expect to have an understanding of all plants just by hugging one Douglas fir tree, for example. They are all different, just like people are different. So one suggested way to get to learn plants around you is to choose a plant per month. So map out your year and maybe try to go so that the plants you are looking at are in season. Right now, well, it's not quite June, but June is a great time of year for ocean spray or the wild roses. But I think you know what I mean. So map out your year, and during that month when that plant is in season, spend time watching how it grows. Spend time looking at maybe what types of insects are around that plant. Taste it, bring it into your house, and if you can cook with it, cook with it. If you can make tea with it, make tea with it. And sit with the plant. You actually can just go and sit beside the plant. And it's really great if you're going to taste it to not have just had a big cup of coffee or eaten a big bar of dark chocolate, because your senses will be all muddled up with that other incoming influence. And this sounds totally out there, but you can talk to the plant, say thank you, express to the plant what your intentions are, especially if you're going to harvest it. This is what traditional people would do. They would actually, they were grateful for the plants. The plants were providing them with food and medicine. And we have largely just completely forgotten that type of gratitude that we should have for what we eat and consume. So as I was saying, when you study a plant, here is mullein in this picture, for those of you who weren't familiar with mullein, and you can see the big soft velvety leaves. And one of the things that you can learn about a plant by studying it is something called the doctrine of signatures. So when you look at mullein and its big soft velvety leaves, and then you see its habitat there, you can see it's quite dry and sparse, and it loves growing in the most unhospitable places. Rocky soil, super hot, often in seasons of drought where there's a lot of forest fires. And what mullein is best for is for supporting and soothing the lungs. And if you look at its leaves, they are soft, almost like a big lung. And it grows in the time of year when there's a lot of smoke particulate matter in the air. So it's telling you right there what it is good for and how it can support you. And so this is a great thing to notice about plants. And once you feel you've connected with a plant, maybe you're actually receiving a message. It's not going to talk to you like, hey there, how are you doing? But you might sense, you might have an idea or a thought, and maybe an opening. Like I was saying, all those words that we have, trust your gut, trust your instincts, follow your intuition. Do that when you're sitting with a plant. You will, if you take time, you will get some type of acknowledgement, I suppose is the word. I'm not an expert in the science of plant communication. I'm just telling you what my experience is. I'm going to transition here a little bit and give you some actual physical, or maybe physical isn't the right word, less woo-woo ideas. A great way to get to know plants is tea. Everybody can go out and find some type of plant that they can make tea with. And this is how you can get to know a plant with, harvesting it in person, but the taste and the smell of it. And this is homework, so I want you all to do this. It's not quite the same as just sitting next to a plant, but if you do go out, like I said, and harvest it, you will have that interaction. I had prepared a whole bunch of teas, but they're all over in my other room now, so I'm not going to go haul all the jars over. But I'm going to talk about a few different preparations. So there's hot infusions, cold infusions, and decoctions. And the main component in any type of tea is the action and the interaction of your solvent, which is water, and the plant material. And that's what allows you to extract the nutritive and medicinal properties of the plants. The type of preparation depends on the plants you are using. So plants that have a lot of volatile oils, mucilage, bitter compounds, some alkaloids and polysaccharides are best in cold water. And others that are higher in tannins and lactins and iridoids are best in hot water. So there's some pictures. So things like in the picture, that's violet leaf and dandelion blossoms. Those are best as a cold water infusion. And generally things like roots and bark and lichens, fungi, there's a turkey tail, those are best in hot water preparations. There are always exceptions, but this is just a general sort of a rule. So for hot water herbal infusions, some people call those nourishing herbal infusions. The best way to do it is to use 1 ounce of dried plant matter to 4 cups of boiling water. You cover the plant material. I just do it straight in a mason jar and cover it with your boiling water, put a lid on, and leave it for at least 4 hours. I prefer to leave mine overnight, and you can drink it cold. You can reheat it in a saucepan. I like to combine a lot of my herbal infusions, but if you're new to this, do them one at a time so you get to know how your body reacts with the plant. Some plants, like if you drink a lot of a stinging nettle infusion, can be drying after a while, and you might notice like your skin gets dry, and that's the time that you want to switch out and try another plant. So I've got some suggested plants there that I like to do fresh. Hi. Fresh or dry. You can just read those. Does everyone see? Just want to make sure you're all following along. Okay, good. You can see Nikki is nodding. And, oh, let's see. I think I lost my place. There we go. Suitable plants. Okay, and you can add to them to iced teas or elixirs. I put them in my kids' smoothies all the time. So if they don't like drinking a stinging nettle infusion cold, they put it in their smoothie and they'll never know they got it. And these plants that I've listed here are all pretty much readily available all over our landscape. Some are just in everybody's yard and garden. Some are in the forest. Sea buckthorn is maybe a bit more of an oddball, but my parents have a giant bush of that in their garden, and it's a wonderful plant. Next is decoctions, and that is when you simmer your plant material for a period of time. And that gets the medicinal and nutritive properties out of bark, roots, fungi, and lichen. Those are what I use mainly, and some berries as well. And there's sort of two different ways to prepare a decoction. You can simmer it for 30 to 45 minutes, pour it into your mason jar and let it steep overnight, or simmer it for 2 to 4 hours and then steep it overnight, or use it right away. I usually use the second method. I usually simmer it for 4 hours and then use it the next day. And some you can even strain off and then do another decoction, especially things like mushrooms. If you use chaga mushroom or turkey tail, there's a lot of properties in those plants. They just keep giving and giving. So in this picture here, my dad was super sick in December or November. He was diagnosed with some type of pneumonia or something. And I made him several batches of this decoction. And those are the ingredients there on the side. And these, some I had in my freezer, the elderberries and rose hips, ginger and turmeric, I just had from the store, the usnea, which is old man's beard. You might know it by that. It's from the forest. Turkey tails are all over the place. You can go out probably today and find turkey tails if you actually are able to identify them. So this is a wonderful immune supporting decoction recipe here. I'm going to go on to the next slide. Hopefully that's okay. Cold infusions. There's a few different types. There's forest infusions, sun infusions, and moon infusions, and then just your basic cold infusion. So you can make those with fresh or dry plant material. It's better to do it fresh, but if you only have dry, that's fine. Just pre-moisten it, or else it'll all float up to the top all the time. And for a cold infusion, you generally need to leave it for quite a while, 2 days or more. And there's a list of suitable plants. I made a violet leaf cold infusion. As I mentioned in the previous slide, things that have a lot of mucilage, which violet leaves are very mucilaginous when they're moist, are very good for a cold infusion. And cleavers are best in cold infusions. Some can go either way. Forest infusions. I was going to make one of these and I didn't have time. The thing about a forest infusion that's wonderful is you can actually do them seasonally and you get to know the flavor of the forest at that time of year. I don't know if anybody knows the word terroir in wine drinkers. Everybody knows what terroir is. It's literally the flavor of place. And you can do that with making a forest infusion. And even things in the wintertime, like twigs. The twigs off of a wild rose bush or the twigs off of an arbutus, those can all be made into a forest infusion. So I've made a list, and it is great if you can include a variety of flavors. So the main flavors you want are sweet, earthy, sour, bitter, floral, salty. Salty just means plants that are rich in minerals. And then sun and moon infusions. Sun infusions are best with blossoms, plants that, you know, are connected with the energetics of the sun. So calendula and dandelion blossoms, things that bloom under the sun. And moon plants are the more cooling plants. Moon plants are commonly, maybe not commonly, but often used by menstruating women to support that time of their cycle. So a lot of these teas you can just drink for pure enjoyment, for relaxation, and to enhance the relationship you have with nature and with those plants. And they all have amazing nutritional and medicinal benefits. And if you can learn about those, that's a wonderful thing to do. I'm going to try to quickly, I don't want to go on too long, I have no idea what time it is. Hopefully I'm not over rambling. Talk about dandelion. It gets a bad rap, but it's a wonderful weed. I use it in so many things. Its Latin name is Taraxacum officinale, And that comes from the Greek taxos, meaning disorder, akos, meaning remedy, and officinal, meaning official. So way back hundreds of years ago, dandelion was the official remedy for disorders of all kinds. And if you look at it here, the doctrine of signatures, you can see it has bright yellow flowers, and it has these long hollow stems. And these indicate, the yellow indicates that it is beneficial for the liver and gallbladder. And the hollow stems indicate that it's beneficial for the blood as a whole and for the urinary tract. Same type of doctrine of signatures is used in traditional Chinese medicine as it is in Western herbalism. Although traditional Chinese medicine uses dandelion for the spleen a lot, whereas Western herbalism uses it more for the liver and gallbladder. Another folk name for dandelion was pissabed, which has nothing to do with bedwetting, but just that it was so well known to be beneficial for the urinary tract and for its diuretic properties. Modern diuretics, you often have to take a potassium supplement with, but because dandelions, are so high in minerals, especially potassium, it's more mild than a pharmaceutical diuretic would be, and it acts more as an aquaretic, which is to expel excessive water in the body. It's more like a balancing herb. And it's also known as an alterative, which means that it is pushing the body from an imbalanced state to a balanced state. Something that's special about dandelion is that it's purifying to the blood, but because it's also a food, it's also nourishing. So it's not very common to have a herb that is both cleansing and building in its qualities. It's a very friendly plant. It grows everywhere, close to human habitation, which also is a way of understanding that it can be used for quite long periods of time. Some herbs are very strong and you can really only use them for short durations, but dandelion is quite safe. So it can be used medicinally or nutritively for long periods of time. And when I talked before about tastes and energetics, I've got them on this slide. So it's overall bitter. The roots tend to be a bit more sweet and the leaves a bit more salty. And then it is a moist, cooling plant. And because it's good for the liver, it's also good for people who have a lot of unchecked anger. The liver is the seat of anger in the body. And high blood pressure, which goes along with anger, right? Hopefully that all makes sense. I could talk, actually I do have a materia medica on dandelion, which is about 50 pages long, and the video on it was over 2 hours. So it's hard for me to say everything about dandelion in a short little amount of space. As food, it is incredibly high in vitamins, C, A, E, K, B complex, and basically all of the minerals. I use the leaves in pestos and in almost all of our meals and in tea. I dry and powder them and I make seasoning salts with them. The roots are wonderful in decoctions and you can just throw them in your slow cooker or in a soup broth or anything like that. And I use the flowers in infused honeys and in oxymels and infused vinegars. And this is a recipe for a cake I recently made, and I posted it and I had so many people ask me for the recipe that I shared the recipe. And so I used 150 dandelion blossoms in the cake and 150 dandelion blossoms in the frosting. So this is my 300 dandelion blossom cake. And Anna was on here before, and her little 2-year-old Levon, even he devoured his whole piece, which is kind of uncommon for 2-year-olds, you know? So it was a success, that cake. And let's see, yes, I have a bunch of dandelion offerings in my shop. So if you're curious, you can go over there and read more about how it can be beneficial. And lastly, now that I've told you all to go outside and cultivate your relationship with nature, if you're going to be harvesting plants for tea, there are, some ethics and safety considerations to keep in mind. first of all, is it safe? So you should have confidence in your identification. Carry a guidebook, or there's some great plant identification apps you can put on your phone now. And I use one called iNat. Oh, I can't remember what it's called. And I've tested it lots of times, and it's been quite accurate most of the time. It's not quite the same as reading a guidebook and having to like search for it, though. It kind of does the hard work for you, but in a pinch, it's great. But besides just knowing the plant, you need to know it's come from an uncontaminated area. So be on the lookout for areas that may have been sprayed with some type of pesticide. Try not to pick from ditches or next to trails where maybe, people walk their dogs. You don't want to pick from an area like that. And next, limit your harvest. I try to keep my picking at 10 to 20% per plant or patch. Per plant would be a big elderberry bush, maybe 10 to 20% of the plant, or patch would be if you were in a big patch of stinging nettles, for example. And that's another time when you do need to know your plant. So plants like wild roses, they have 5 petals, and the bees pollinate them, and they use those 5 pink petals as kind of like their little, satellite dish. It like directs them in. And if you pick all the petals off a wild rose, the bee is going to have a hard time finding it. So I always pick just 3 to 4 petals off a rose. You'll get a good hang of your pinch, so you can pinch it and still leave 1 or 2 on, so the bee can continue to pollinate the plant. Know your plants, again, goes back to also identification, but the appropriate harvesting method. Some plants like elder flowers really love a hard pruning, and rose bushes can really have a good pruning. So you can just snip your whole bush off, like big branches, and take those home, and it will benefit the plant. And carry a field guide, as I mentioned, and also know how to harvest or prepare your plants. That's what I was going to say. So stinging nettles, you pick the leaves in early spring, and then you want to leave them, and you can harvest the seeds as well, but the seeds are best to get late summer and early fall. And it's not really great to pick the leaves throughout the year because they get tough and they have a buildup of, I think it was some type of oxalate or something that's hard on digestion. So you really just want to pick the little young spring leaves. The fourth thing is harvest with gratitude and intention, and enjoy yourself. So if I'm going out to harvest fireweed to make one of my facial serums, I, have an intention of what I'm going to do, and you appreciate finding the plant when you find it. So you kind of carry that same intention throughout the whole process, right until the end when you've put that label on your plant, on your final product. And it kind of helps you build a relationship with the plants. It's like I said before with the meal your grandma cooks for you. The joy sort of carries on all the way through. And then that will translate into the people who use your product or drink your tea. And lastly, respect the land. So go out there, but don't trample everything. Don't pick 80% of the plant or patch, and clean up as you go. Everywhere we go, even in the most obscure places, we find just the most unexpected piles of garbage. I feel like there is nowhere you can go without finding a bag of beer cans or wine bottles or shoes, or geez, we found a vacuum way in the woods once. You can find anything, and we haul it all out as best we can. We didn't bring the vacuum out. It was too big. So plants are nourishment for the soul. I love that.
There you go. That's your daughter Roma, right?
Yes, that's Roma. And that's it. So thank you, everybody.
And is that you sleeping in the moss there?
That's Jasper sleeping in the moss.
So before we get into discussion, we got a little surprise here with this poll, right?
Oh, yes, that's
A little
right.
bit of the poll. There you go. You get to choose. What is your favorite wildflower? Fireweed, Nootka rose, violet, stinging nettle, yarrow, pearly everlasting, dandelion, devil's club, Oregon grape, or St. John's wort. So you can all vote for your favorite wildflower and have a
They're
think.
not necessarily wildflowers, just wild plants.
Okay, I wrote the wild.
Although they do all have flowers. Devil's Club has a flower, and stinging nettle has little green flowers. So that it's true. They are all wildflowers.
Yeah, so we're waiting for the votes to come in. People are thinking around this one. It's pretty scattered here.
Okay, well, I'll put my vote.
I can see the results coming in, but you can't, of course. So I can tell you that
Let's see. Now my mouse is on the floor and it's not working so well.
10, so there's another 6 people to vote. I don't think I can vote myself because I see I've either got the controls of this. Any more votes to come in here? Anyone else want to vote? Okay, well,
I'm trying. I'm putting in
the vote. Jane, I'll wait till you've done it for you.
Oh, it's not letting me.
No?
No, no, I messed up. No, see, I can't get to.
Maybe you have to stop screen.
Unshare your screen there, Jane.
Stop screen.
Unshare screen, and then you'll be able to vote, I think.
Stop share.
Yes.
Oh, woohoo! Hi, Eric. There we go.
Okay, so I'll end the poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's your results. For what it tells us. Now you have to pass deep philosophical comments on these choices, Jane.
Oh, I can't see them.
You can't see them. Hang on, share results. Oh, I had to do that. Got an extra person.
Okay, fireweed. Oh, violet, stinging nettle, dandelion. Oh, dandelions coming up ahead. Woohoo!
You did a good marketing job on the dandelion, I think, right? Well,
for me, it was a toss-up. I chose fireweed, but Devil's Club is my second favorite.
Yeah.
Although they're all lovely. Okay.
So I'm going to stop this sharing now, and I'm going to unmute everyone. And so if you want to ask a question of Jane, I'm going to put you all so I can see you all. How's that? Just raise your hand. And, so Pamela, the question for Jane.
Yes, Jane, when you were talking about the dandelions, you said that you can use that medicine for a long time. Does that mean throughout the season because it doesn't get any more bitter, or you can use it personally for a long time without getting, I don't know, an effect?
Someone's kitchen is going on.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to mute everyone. And so while Pamela's sorting out her fire alarm, whatever's going on there, if you want to ask a question, raise your hand, or that's difficult for Brian, Anna, those who haven't got their camera up, and I will unmute you. So Pamela, do you want to, Pamela, I can unmute you. Okay. Pamela, have a go again.
Use dandelion for a long time.
You might need to repeat that.
Okay, now I can talk. Yeah, I meant personal use because it's generally a mild plant. If you're drinking a lot of a decoction from the roots, that can be a bit drying over time. That's the only thing I've ever noticed. But if you were using the leaves when they're in season, of course, you could use those every day, and you could eat dandelion blossoms every day. The main thing you would use year round would be if you were drinking decoctions or using the roots in food preparations. But yes, that's what I meant.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And the roots are more bitter in the fall and sweeter in the spring if you are harvesting them yourself.
Okay, so I'm going to unmute. Who wants to? Any questions from anyone? I'm going to unmute you all temporarily, so you can just call out.
Well, before you unmute me, I've got a great recipe for dandelion pancakes.
Oh, we make those every weekend. They're so good. Yes. Yeah. That's a great way to eat them. Jasper and Roma go out and they pick all the dandelions for me, and then I make the pancakes.
Right. Nice.
Anyone else got a question or a thought?
Jane?
Yes, Gary.
Well, first, Guy, thank you for hosting this, and also Jane. I'd just like to start by saying thank you so much for having the courage to do the work that you're doing and to follow your heart and to speak to that stuff. I think that's what we need. We need a shift in consciousness and a shift in towards listening, and that, you know, it's good to hear other people kind of just put that out there and do that. I don't really have much of a. I came to this because this is something that I'm really interested in. I'm growing a lot of food now, but I'm really interested in getting out into nature and learning about the medicines, and I just wanted, this is something I really wanted to do in the spring, and now I'm here listening to you, but I wish I was on like a walk with you or somebody like yourself. Could you maybe give it a suggestion for somebody like myself who's new to this and how to get started? Because yeah, it's one thing to hear this from you, but to actually get out there and.
Well, I mean, a great way, like I said, is just to choose a few plants you're interested, and you can literally, however funny it might sound to some people, just go hang around that plant and watch it and see how it grows and changes over the season. I'm going to grab a book that I like.
Okay.
And you're in Victoria, Gary, aren't you? Right?
I'm in Victoria, yes.
Yeah. Loads of parks to explore down there.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is just a basic plant book, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a good one. And Nancy Turner did some writing in this book, but she also has this one, which is more specific to just traditional uses, but it does have some good information, and I like both of those books. I have a few plant walks. Well, I had one that, of course, I've had to cancel a lot of things with everything.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few things I'm starting to do again in June, and all that's on my website.
Okay.
So I'm trying to offer a few events and workshops. I am not a good public speaker like this. I feel like I just rambled to everyone for an hour. I'm much better at doing this when I'm outside and I can like show people.
Actually, Jane, I do a lot of public speaking, and I find listening to you much more relaxing than listening to me.
Oh.
Because I'm so full of energy and policy this, and with you I actually got my slippers off and my whole energy calmed down. You can tune into the plants and take it more slowly. So it's beautiful. You're doing just great.
Yeah, and well, like that picture I posted of myself where I was laying on the moss, I actually do a lot of that. I mean, we live in a fast-paced, frenetic, stressed-out world, and I don't deal well with that type of stress. And I just go out into our front yard and I lie on my stomach in the grass, and then I flip over and I lie on my back. I have an Instagram page and I share little stories up there sometimes. And I did one in my backyard where I just talked more about grounding and why it can be so beneficial just to like combat all of the feelings of anxiety. So yeah, just go outside. If you are on Instagram, there actually are a lot of great plant people accounts who will go out and do like little virtual plant walks and get a book.
So I want to
come with me sometime.
Let me invite Carolyn to chip in here, because I know when you were younger, Carolyn, you were just immersed in plants and nature, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I spent all my time as a kid roaming around the wilds as much as possible out of the house. Yeah.
Did you ever lie down with your cheek on the ground and talk to the plants one-on-one?
Oh, that's one of my favorite things. Yeah, going into a field and just lying down and being covered by plants.
Oh, I agree. That is the best.
Yeah.
Farmer's not so happy.
Anyone else want to share or anything before we wind up?
Well, I'd just like to ask Jane, when people come to your shop to see you, And they're obviously open to herbal preparations and healing. But also, I think sometimes people don't realize the potency of the plants, and that they have to proceed with caution, because it's like some people say, oh, it's herbal, it's safe, you know.
Yeah.
But we do have to beware of compatibilities and dosages and things like that. So you have to factor that in when you're actually prescribing for somebody to match them up.
Yeah, so when I make my products, they come with a little info card that has the ingredients, and then sort of the uses, as well as the suggested dose. Now, I'm also have on that card that I'm not a doctor, and some of the plants do have contraindications or cautions, such as St. John's wort and hawthorn, and I have those listed on the info cards as well. Yeah, so that I do cover that to the best of my ability within my scope.
Right. I love that cake that you made, by the way, and posted on Facebook. It's so brilliant.
Oh, yes. I'm going to be making a Douglas fir tip cake soon. I combine those with rhubarb, and you can only make these once a year, so we look forward to them every year. So if you have been out noticing the bright green little fir tips, they are so good. The fir tips are more lemony. Grand fir is a bit more like of a grapefruity citrus flavor. If you can find a spruce tree, the spruce tip, well, there's only one spruce tree I know of around here, but the spruce tips they're almost too late already. They come out first, but those are great teas. They're great in salads. I put them in everyone's breakfast every morning. They make wonderful flavorings in like shortbreads or cookies. So that's a good way to get to know something that's absolutely abundant here. And you can taste the subtle differences between them.
Yeah. It's like seeing the world with new eyes, so when you realize it's something you can actually ingest.
Exactly. Yes. I told a little boy when we were walking to school that he could eat horsetail, and the fertile shoots were coming up. So we picked one and peeled the bracts off, and he was just like he'd just blown his mind open. It was the funniest thing. Yeah.
So Eric, I know you're living in the forest, body, soul, and spirit. Have you ever made tea or used the tips for teas and things?
Yeah, at Wildwood we've used grand fir. We've used as a plant, a little flowering plant called Yorba Buena that Nancy Turner likes a lot.
That's a
I
lovely.
think that's something else too, and I can't remember. There's three things. So the grand fir tips, the Yorba Buena, and there's one other thing, and I'm not going to be able to remember what it is. But yeah, so they've made that at Wildwood several times. They've made grand fir. They've used grand fir needles to make shortbread at Wildwood and stuff. So yeah.
Actually, if everybody sends Guy, or I don't know how this is set up, but if Guy can see people's email addresses,
No, I can't.
I did make up a little DIY herbal wild teas handout for another talk I did, and I could send that to everyone. It has lists of, you know, the suitable plants for the various types of teas.
But if you send it to me, I can share it with the whole yes list, because there could be maybe people who, you know, want to be on this and can't join us, so they'd enjoy it.
Yeah, save it to share it there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any final wrap-up thoughts or questions from anyone? Okay, Jane, your last thoughts.
I'm just glad for those people who are here, and thank you all for listening to me. I think I'm going to maybe open my shop again soon, you know, a day a week or a couple days a week, so feel free to
Your shop is on Fern Road in Cedar.
Yes, and the website is champagnehillbotanicals.ca, and I think my email and phone number and all that stuff
on the
is
website.
there, so,
champagnehillbotanicals.ca.
yes.
Well, look, thank you so much for sort of I know it takes a lot of work to put these together, and you've had to find someone to look after Roma and Jasper. So thank you for all the effort and time you put into this, and thanks to everyone else for joining us. Clap all around, yeah.
Jane.
And have a great evening, everyone.
See everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Jane.